Make it a game. Because, then it doesn't have the emotional baggage. It's like, well, what if I could do this? Well, what if I could win this game? And that to me is the game of life.
Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, Sean Morgan, a full-time teacher. That's right, I teach every day just like you, and personal financial coach. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you're a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck, have a richer wallet, classroom, and life. The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. I am super excited to have Susan Meredith on the show today. I've known Susan for a number of years, and Susan is passionate about creating educational experiences. So we're going to talk a lot about creating educational experiences around financial literacy. She's the inventor of Mentomorph Money, which is a multi-scenario game and curriculum to practice financial decision-making when engaging in effective and fun scenarios. So it's pretty fun. And she is also the founder of multiple other businesses that are in corporate education for environmental sustainability and so forth. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So let's just dive in with, how did you get interested in personal financial literacy? It's a pretty niche topic to be like, this is what I'm going to focus in on to try and make a difference in this space. So how did you get connected to this?
Pretty roundabout way. I was in corporate. I was an engineer in IBM was where I worked, and as a woman engineer, I was successful. I mean, I was in the top 5% of women wage earners at the time, and what I realized is money isn't it. Believe it or not, that's really what made me interested, I think. And I took a course called Money and You, which was more about you than money. And they also had a global educators program. So that's really where I got into education. So it was about financial education, and it was very focused on experience-based education. So during the time I was in that program, I dreamt this game.
Wow. So it's a vision from above.
It definitely was a gift. Yeah, it was a gift from above. I mean, I just, I woke up, I wrote it down. I went, I guess I should do something with this and play it with. So I played it with the other instructors, in this global educators program of financial education, and they thought it was great. But it wasn't something that I could really, because it plays very quickly. And, so I couldn't really do anything with it without having 3 facilitators, and I used toothpicks for money and stickers on paper. And it kept coming back to me to do something with it over 30 years. It's been since I dreamt that game. So it's been a journey, but it wouldn't let go of me.
Yeah. So I love how you're talking about just like kind of being scrappy here. Teachers probably are quite familiar with using toothpicks or stickers or other things to make something work. And I think that the important thing for us to realize, just as a complete side tangent, is you don't have to have the fancy, bells and whistles to make something to work, right? And naturally, you're now building out the bells and whistles portion to try and make it smoother and easier to use. But for teachers, I think a huge takeaway is that you said, what, this is important. I'm going to make it work with toothpicks and stickers. I don't have to go buy the most nice perfect thing to make it work or anything like that out of the gate.
Right. Yeah, and making game-based learning is not as difficult as people think, probably. It does take an investment of time and energy to do it, but I think it's worth it for the concepts that are really, we want the deep learning. We want people to really get what it is rather than just kind of more of a surface learning.
Yeah, so I want to talk about game-based learning. I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways I want people to get from this episode, because I really like your definition of game-based learning, as we've talked about it back and forth multiple times, versus this gamified learning, which I think
Yeah.
is not nearly as helpful. But just real quick, just so people understand what we're talking about, we're talking about Mentomorph Money. So when Susan and I got connected, I've helped write the curriculum for Mentomorph Money, just full disclosure, right? So we've been partnering on this. But it's Susan's brainchild, Susan's game. Can you just tell us what it is real quick, just like a brief summary, so that way people know what we're talking about?
Sure. Yeah, it is a game that is on the phone or on the computer where you practice and improve financial decisions in scenarios. And each scenario is tied to some curriculum. So you set up the game in a way that helps give that learning, for that curriculum. And you can practice over and over again. There's all kinds of, you're making all the decisions at once. So it really simulates real life. It simulates getting out of paycheck to paycheck mode.
Right. I love it. So it's a simulation that allows you to quickly practice making the right decision. And then if you make a wrong decision, you get to practice it again, right? And I love this game-based learning for financial literacy because this difference between game-based and gamifying is, in my opinion, the practice piece, right? Is that correct? Can you explain the difference between these two and why yours is game-based versus gamified?
Yes, I mean, that's part of it. Gamification is really adding something to complement the learning, where game-based is you're actually learning from the game itself, from the activities of the game itself. So you can game and I mean, there's great aspects of gamification, to get, motivated, or, rewards and things like that. But the game-based learning is you're actually practicing, like you say, you're practicing the principles that you're learning. And that's one of the other things, one of the challenges, I think, with financial literacy, financial education, is there really aren't right answers, like absolute right answers. There's right answers in a situation, maybe, but not, there aren't absolute right answers. So it is the practicing, you can play the same game with multiple strategies and see what the difference is, which is like real life.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's simulating real life. So like for teachers who are trying to wrap their head around this, sometimes, like for example, in my social studies classes, we would do like a debate where we would assign people a role and they'd have to act out that role and say, okay, we're in the situation room at the White House. This is what's happening. You're the president, you're the secretary of state, like, and they would like pretend to be that person and give advice based on who that person was, and then talk about it, and they'd come to an agreement about what they should do, right? That's kind of like a game-based situation because you are practicing in real life this art of decision making versus gamification. Like I had a software that we used at my last school where they would answer a question, and if they got it right, they'd be like, "Woohoo! You get 5 points!" Right? Like that's gamifying it because it's like trying to build motivation more than it's about the mechanics of an actual game. And I really
Perfect example.
I really love the art of practicing it, the actual getting into the trenches of game-based learning.
Yeah.
But
Where it doesn't cost you in the financial realm, you can practice in the real world and it can be very costly, but here you can practice and learn and go and also realize, oh, maybe I need to go learn more about that aspect of it, because we certainly don't go into the overwhelmingly complex and multitudes of choices in the financial world.
yeah, I love that. Uh, can you explain any other benefits to using game-based learning or experiential learning as you talked about?
Well, one of the other aspects is the fact that there's so many learning types. And, one of the things I talk about is I am a very engineering minded person, is adding dimension or depth or, substance to learning. So you can just tell somebody something. Well, probably everybody has been told that you should save, and you save for emergencies, and, don't use your credit card. There's all kinds of words that have been said about financial education, but it really is about having the depth of it. And one example, my husband was definitely a kinesthetic learner. He was not, he it was hands-on was the way he learned. And so there's lots of people that they really need to get in and do something. And so I look as much as possible always, how do I add more depth and dimension and, substance to the learning. We have some activities like one of my favorites is about compound interest. You know, how do you experience what compound interest is? Not just look, watch me saying this is what it is. So I always look for, ways to add that to any kind of learning, is make it more substantial and meet the other kinds of learning styles. Everybody learns from experience.
Yeah, the learning styles thing is really interesting. There's debates about like how that really applies to the classroom. And I feel like the best answer is just use all of them, right?
Yes.
Because you can hear it and see it and touch it and do all of these different things. And just the more ways you approach it, the better it's going to stick, right?
Yeah.
And game-based learning allows you to just really make it
Yeah.
stick. And it's so important for financial literacy to have these different approaches at it. I don't want to knock any other particular financial literacy programs, but many of them are just like, watch a video, fill out a worksheet.
Right.
Like this is just not going to mean anything, especially to like, a ninth grader. If you say, hey, fill out this worksheet, can you define compound interest? Like, who cares as a ninth grader, right? But if you
Right.
can feel it, if you can see, wow, I went from having $10 to having $100 over the course of this game through the power of compound interest, that is something that's much more powerful because they're experiencing it.
Right. And another important aspect of it is the discussion part of it. That also adds dimension. So it's not just, me telling you this is the right answers. It really is experiencing it and then sharing it with other people. And what did you do? One of the fun ones and early on, and we'll certainly build it into the game at some point, was when these two kids were playing the game that was the physical game, and they paired up to work together to create more money, more net worth, and I thought, that is just exactly the kind of thing that you want to happen. And if just doing a worksheet, you're not going to do that. So there's those kind of elements that happen as a teacher. It's fun to see other things happen, where the learning isn't coming just from you, it's coming from the classroom, and they can teach each other.
Yeah. Oh man, goodness. Amen. Amen. Okay. So the ability to collaborate is huge. I talk about this frequently, right? The ability to, ask somebody for their advice and listen in, like, I offer coaching because sometimes you just are stuck with your own thought, right? You don't see another way. And when you talk to somebody, they're able to say, well, have you thought about this? And suddenly, boom, roadblock has just exploded. You've got it. And it doesn't have to be an expert, right? I'll talk to my wife sometimes and she's like, I don't care. I don't really want to know. That's your thing. She really is just like, I'm just along for the ride. And I'm trying to coach her out of that, but she is pretty obstinate on it. And I'll just talk to her about something and she'll say, well, what about this? And I'll go, well, yeah, what about that? It doesn't take a lot of experience to be able to just have a different idea, a different thought, a different perspective that allows you to just move ahead. And I feel like, just the power of the peers speaking to each other instead of the
Absolutely.
teacher saying, you should do this or what, like, it's just like, hey, I did this and it worked really well. Like, they're going to respond so much better to that than just, the teacher getting up and be like, you ought to, put this much money into an IRA and you ought to, have an emergency fund.
Yeah.
Wah, 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 wah. They're not going to listen.
Right. And what we really want is for, the game to motivate you to go find out what an IRA is and what you'll learn about more things. And we don't expect you to stop with the game. I really care not about somebody playing the game, but changing behavior and actually using it. That's what's really important.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you mentioned, actually, or one thing I want to say is what's fun is as a teacher is when you learn from your students. I've had, and the example I give all the time, just because of how powerful it was when the kid was playing the game and he never put money into savings or investment. He just, whenever he got money, he spent it. And when we were discussing that, then why the discussions are so important too, is to allow those to go, in the ways they need to go. We were talking about interest on savings, passive income. And he said, you mean Lone Star cards? And Lone Star cards are food stamps. And it didn't dawn on me, that, oh yeah, food stamps, you can't put them into savings or investment. You can only spend them. So it really made me realize how, so many people in our country don't really even get exposed to what could happen when you put money into savings and investment. So the game could show him that. And then, then he could go find out and do something with it rather than you get it, you spend it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so powerful. Changing behavior. I once again, I say this often that money is like 10% math, maybe 20% vocabulary, and the rest is just behavior, right? It's just
It
the
is.
psychology of practicing making the right choices. So, we do teach the math, right? We do teach, the vocabulary, but that's where most financial education stops instead of practicing it, right?
Right.
And the practice is where the game comes in, and it's really what escalates. This is why I really believe in Mentomorph. That's why I've spent so much time working on this project with Susan, because of that behavior piece, which is so powerful. Because, like, yeah, the education's there, but the behavior practice in the actual game is what will make the difference in somebody's life, way more than just learning what, compound versus simple interest means.
But one thing to say is, and I mean, you do an amazing job. It's not just the game. If it's just the game, then, okay, yeah, I played this game. It is the combination of the game and the discussions and the curriculum. Because what happens in the game is the minds get open of, oh, I guess there's something I could learn here. And so it makes somebody motivated to really dig in and learn, where they might go, oh, this is too hard, this compound interest stuff, I'm just going to zone out. When they played the game and it's like, look, you could get ahead if you really understood how this worked, they're going to be more motivated to learn. And so having that curriculum there is really an important part. And you do such a good job on creating the curriculum. So yeah.
Thank you. We're not here to toot my horn though. So what I want to ask now is, you've really just dived into this world of teaching people personal financial literacy through this game-based education. And these things are powerful ways of helping someone go from not understanding it to practicing it to living it. What do you feel like is the number one thing holding people back, based on your experience, from achieving financial freedom?
Well, I was thinking about that. There's so many different things, but some of it is just like I said, the kid that was what he was raised with. And so he never was exposed to anything else, is number one. Number two, I think, is the emotional baggage we put on financial, like as far as our worth. We think it's our worth. And I don't, that's one of the things to me that's really important, that this is a game about financial literacy, but it really is more about your assets and your, liabilities and your income, that is not just monetary. So if you, like, the example I use is investing in a financial education game company in the short run. If you just look at the numbers on the bank accounts and stuff, that's lower than if I didn't do that, right? But does that make me worth less? Absolutely not. I mean, I have this asset of, the knowledge that I've gained and the experience I've gained. And so to me, it's really about having a full life of all different things. And we have this kind of artificial, I mean, money is man-made. It was made as a tool for exchange, and it is not the worth of a person. It is a tool. And so getting out of that mindset of thinking that somehow, if I don't do it right, that I'm a failure, it's like, no, it's a journey. The financial, life is a journey, and it's about, enjoying the journey.
Yeah, you're bringing up, like, if you have less numbers, are you worth less? And I feel like teachers almost have the opposite problem. We know that we have worth, but we're not worried about the numbers. But the numbers also do matter, right? For us to be able to live a free life. You have more options, more optionality, more choices when you are able to master the numbers, right? So I always tell teachers, you're already rich, you have great worth. Your
Yes.
wallet just needs to catch up, right? You need to have the money side of it. And I think that, both of those need to be definitely balanced, right? You need to have your internal worth, but you also can't neglect your net worth. And I think in my experience, teachers are much more on the neglecting the net worth side for a lot of reasons. Like you're saying, like the emotional baggage that comes with a lot of things, the what you've been told, right? You're going to be poor, that kind of thing is just what's ingrained in people's minds, so they don't expect to have greater things.
It's funny you say that. When I left the corporate world of IBM and whatever, and I committed, I was going to go and make a difference. I mean, that was fundamentally kind of the reason. I was like, okay, God, tell me what to do and I'll do it. It was a very spiritual kind of journey. But one of the things I thought at the time was that I had to become poor to go off and do what, and I consciously realized that that's what I was thinking, and it's like, no, it's not a choice. It is actually makes you able to do more. And so one of the questions and what I did is I didn't actually mention this, is I went into education. I was teaching corporate education, statistics and Six Sigma, and I did that for 20 years. So I've been a teacher for a long time in the corporate world. But it's a real journey to go out and say, okay, I'm just going to do what is important. And anyway, I
So
was on a track and I forgot what I was saying.
it's okay. I love this point of, we are having to, because you were talking about, you felt like you had to be poor, but you didn't actually have to be poor. It's just like a mindset thing, and that keeps us in position. So if we're struggling with this emotional baggage, or this, really, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? This kid who just had no idea that you could invest or save. What do you think we need to do to overcome that specific challenge?
That one I'm clear on is make it a game. Make it a game. Because, then it doesn't have the emotional baggage. It's like, well, what if I could do this? Well, what if I could win this game? And that to me is the game of life. And if you look at it in a more holistic way, it's like, well, one of the things that's interesting to me is when you think about money, what is the goal of money? I ask people that all the time. What is the goal of money? And I think I've probably asked that of you. I don't know if you want to answer, go ahead, but
Well, I feel like it depends on who you are, right? There's no, like you were saying, there's no one answer, one right answer. So like, what's your goal with money? It could be entirely different than what my goal with money is. And I think that that's what makes it a tool and not an
right.
end.
And you realize it's a tool when you really think about it, because generally people don't have a goal of money. I want to make, I actually in college, when I left college, I was dating a guy who did have a goal of money. He wanted to make $1 million by the time he was 29. His goal of money was really clear, but most people don't have that. And if you think about what the goal of money is, in the game, it becomes a little clear. It's about your net worth. But if you think about life, your net worth, I would say that it's the same, but it's not just monetary. It's to live the fullest life and to really enjoy it. And so that's why I say make it a game. Is like, well, what if I could play this game and see how I could do? And, and there's things to do to make sure that it's anyway, that there's a whole thing about making the game, how do you make a game-based learning and everything, but make it a game, make it not so, and setting money aside so you can make it a game, or it's just make it more fun, because it's just such a emotional, it's not about our worth. If you came from a household that didn't have money versus somebody who did have money, that has nothing to do with your worth. But can you do something, in some ways, I always say, because I taught statistics, is like, if you come from lower down, you're more successful if you can get up, to, anyway, that's an important thing, I think.
Yeah, just as a side note, you said that making it a game removes the emotional baggage. Obviously, you've never watched a sports team, the emotional baggage of a game. No, yeah. So, no, I love
No, but it's there's a difference of going for, this is actually, I'm glad you said that, because what we tend to do is focus on the negative, like, oh no, what could happen, and the negative. But when you're playing a sports team, it's usually very clear that you're focused on the goal of winning the game. And that's actually something about game design that's interesting. There's a goal of getting a goal, this goal right now, in soccer or in football or whatever. But the bigger game is, the overall winning of it, and so if you stay focused on the goal, having the highest net worth at the end of your life being both money and everything else, don't exclude money. It's part of it, and it gives you so much more flexibility to do so many other things and to make a difference. If you have money, you can make more difference for other people too. So if you make the net worth as a whole a goal in life, then it's a game, and stay focused on the goal, not about what could happen in the rearview mirror or in the opposite direction. That's a whole thing about, the physics of teaching life skills through physics and finance. That's my thing.
Yeah, I love how you're talking about having the largest net worth, including things other than money, because I feel like this is once again what we need to realize is that net worth, when we're talking about it, in personal finance, it just means, dollar amount. But like, let's say you accumulate $1 million, right? But then you use that $1 million to, build an orphanage somewhere, right? You haven't lost your net worth. You've lost dollars, but that orphanage has, you just transferred the worth over there, and it's probably a larger worth. You've probably invested in and grown that worth as a result of that. And that's just a pretty huge example. But the point is that the dollars are just a store of value until you do something else with it. So you can, you could die with not a single dollar to your name, but if you've used the money that you've accumulated to do good things, you have increased your net worth as a result. But you can do more good with more dollars, right? So many teachers have such a heart for giving. They want to give and help and do all these things. But if you're taking it out of your own pocket and you can't grow your own net worth money-wise because you're doing that, you might be giving yourself like less of a chance to do good later, a huge impact later, because you don't have the financial means to do so. So I would just, say that building your personal net worth will allow you to do much more good later.
Yeah, and you hit on, there's like three different things I'm thinking from what you said. One is, in the game, you have to do all of these things at once, and that is the challenge, is balancing, all these different things at once. Because you need to handle your expenses and everything, but how do you build the wealth through assets? And one of the things that is not done, people don't have a focus on, is about assets and liabilities. We talk a lot about income and expense in our society, but not so much about assets and liabilities. And so what you're talking about as an asset, you're changing it from a cash asset to a non-cash asset, is really how we differentiate them in the game. And the non-cash assets can be more valuable. Like you say, they can increase in value. And that's also the aspect of the non-monetary ones, which is that your assets of education and experience and friendships and so on. And I think that's really important for kids to really understand that those are assets, and you're growing, investing in those is really important. That grows your worth as a person if you have a better education and if you have better relationships. And by the same token, the liabilities of, having a bad reputation, or, doing something with, drugs, or, any of those things, those are assets and liabilities. And if we focus more on that, I think also that will help really people understand more about net worth.
I love it. Okay, so this game is powerful. It's a great way to teach personal financial literacy. No matter where you are, personal financial literacy is coming. It's whether it's already at your state, or it's coming soon, or your state says, "Oh, we've got it already," but it's not really that great. It's coming with a vengeance, right? Every state, I would wager, every state by 2035 will have a personal financial literacy requirement in their schools. And beyond that, it's just a good thing to teach kids. So, however you can, you need to be prepared to teach it. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you want to teach it. You would love to help your students with personal financial literacy. And I cannot stress enough how much I love this product as a way to teach it to our kids, to really help them engage with it deeply. So, Susan, if a teacher is interested in using Mentomorph Money to teach the kids at the school, of course, they'd have to go through their principal and all that stuff, but how could they get in contact with you to do that?
Well, the best way is on mentomorph.com website. There's a contact us button there that you can let us know what you want to do, what you want to talk about. And there's also a place to enroll for some of the public courses. One of my favorites is the Power Hour. I guarantee you will get, it's the most efficiently effective financial education is the way I describe it, because in 1 hour, you'll be amazed at how much we cover. And so that's a great way, because experiential learning, you have to experience it to really understand how different it is. It is not like the other things that you see out there, so experience it. So yeah, the website, and there's also a little video on the homepage that about a minute and a half that shows really what it is.
Yeah. So I will have the links to all of those things in the show notes. teachermoneyshow.com/podcast is where you can find the show notes for all the shows. Or if you go down to your podcast player in the description, you'll find a link directly to this episode, and you'll be able to get to the Mentomorph webpage to view that video, to do the contact. And then I'll also have information on this Power Hour. And since you are listening to this show, you are a friend of Mentomorph, and you'll be able to participate in that Power Hour free of charge by using the code that I'll provide in the description, in the show notes. So love to have you there. Experience it. Bring your principal, bring anyone you want, and we'll just participate in this, figure out how it's different to have a game-based financial literacy education, and then we'll be able to change the world, because that's the key here. By teaching teachers about personal financial literacy, and then you teach your students about it, the world will be a better place.
Yeah, you're so important. Mentally morph millions of mindsets about money. Help us in our mission to mentally morph millions of mindsets about money. And you're so important in our world, in our kids' world. And, Sean, we came together from a passion of financial education, and it's a wonderful thing. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for coming on the show. This was a ton of fun, and I hope that our teachers gained a lot of good insights from this.
Thank you so much.
Wow, that was a lot of fun. Thank you, Susan, so much for coming on the show. Now time for the Cliff Notes. The Cliff Notes are brought to you by Mentomorph. So once again, Mentomorph is a company for financial education with this game-based learning. I have participated in it almost from the beginning of this new app-based version by writing the curriculum for it. I cannot stress enough how much I love this game-based education. So if you or your school would like to use this curriculum for teaching your students, please go to mentomorph.com, and you'll be able to learn all about the multiple scenarios, the multiple modules of curriculum that we have that will help guide your students into better financial decision making and get to practice that. All right, now on to the Cliff Notes. The first Cliff Note is remember to practice. Practicing is what makes education become part of your life. The practicing aspect of the game is what makes it so that they can try out what it's like to make financial decisions in real life without risking any actual money. This is my favorite part about game-based education, is that you get to practice it before you actually have to do it in a real life scenario. The second Cliff Note is the importance of discussion. I love how this episode's been really about having a richer classroom, because you can use these ideas in a richer classroom scenario. So you have more discussion to bring in more voices instead of just the teacher's voice. Have each student say, this is what I did. Well, I did this. How did that work? Did it work better? And you're able to elevate everyone by having them discuss back and forth what they did and what did and did not work, much more than me just sitting up there and dictating to them, this is how you ought to do it. Because once again, your situation is unique. You can't say this is always the right way everyone should handle their money. And I think that that's something that's really emphasized well in this curriculum, that it's up to you. There are bad decisions to make, but there are a lot of good ones too. Cliff note number 3, you can engage multiple modes of learning to really make something stick right? We've talked about those kinesthetic versus, auditory versus all these other ones, which, we all know that that's just about different ways you can teach, and not necessarily like one person can only learn this way. But the more modes you use, the better it will stick. And this is so important in personal finance, because most personal finance curriculums are just stuck with the tell it to them, make them write it down, direct instruction, which is just not the most effective way, especially for something that is so hands-on in real life. You need to have multiple modes of learning to help it stick. Number 4, you don't know what you don't know, and that can cause a lot of issues. So if you are not aware of investing, not aware of saving, not aware of the way to move forward when you have an emergency, these are things that are holding many people back because they just don't know. But on the other hand, even for those of us who do know, we have these behavior issues because of our emotional baggage. We don't always act the right way because of this built-in money script that we have in our brain. If you remember that episode with Becca Andrews, I'll link back to that one, where we talked about these defining money moments. That is something that is just hugely important to realize, that you have these things that are kind of defining the way you live, that emotional baggage that we were talking about, and you can change that by doing just small incremental things to shift yourself away from that. Highly recommend you go back to that episode to just really remind yourself how you can shift away from this emotional baggage and see your worth, not just in the numbers, but in your overall life. And number 5, to overcome these problems, make it a game. Have some goal, something you're shooting for, and then do everything you can to get there. Whether it is you are trying to shoot for a retirement goal, or maybe you're trying to just save so that way you don't have to get a loan to buy a vehicle that you need to pay for coming up. Gamify that. And by gamify that, I mean have that goal in place, that positive goal you're going for, and reward yourself for hitting milestones. So that way you're more incentivized to make the right decisions and so forth along the way. Making it a game is a way to overcome these emotional baggages that are holding us down. So that way we're just, focused and moving towards a positive outcome. Okay, those are my cliff notes from my discussion with Susan. I hope that you really enjoyed this. It's a little different than what we usually do, but I wanted to bring this idea in of game-based learning as a powerful way to teach personal financial literacy, and as a powerful way for you to be able to practice the behaviors of personal finance. So I cannot recommend enough that you just go and do this 1 hour. It's absolutely free. If you use the code that I'm providing in the show notes at teachermoneyshow.com/podcast, you'll be able to do that free 1 hour course and just practice making better money decisions. And it's just gonna be a ton of fun. So I highly recommend you do that and enjoy that mode of learning as a new way to help you engage in personal financial literacy. But regardless of how you learn about your money, regardless of how you move forward in your money journey, remember that as a teacher, you are already rich. Your wallet just needs to catch up. Are you worried you won't have enough money to retire? Or maybe you just don't know how you're going to get out of all of this debt. Whatever your situation is, I can help you. Go to teachermoneyshow.com/guest and fill out the form there. And you can come on the show for free coaching, or we can meet one-on-one to discuss your needs. I look forward to talking to you.